Hello and welcome to Writing Today. In this episode, I'll be talking about how you can develop your writing voice. There are many writers out there who are just starting out, who still haven't found their style yet, their footing when it comes to writing. So that's what I'll be covering in this episode, going through some methods you can use to help you find your writing style, as well as techniques to help you improve it. As always, you can find this blog post on my website, thepensleuth.com. There's a link to that in the description below. And if you're interested in some premium writing education, I recommend checking out my Writer's Workshop. Whether you're interested in a library of writing courses from science fiction to fantasy, or you're interested in one-on-one coaching, the Writer's Workshop has exactly what you need. So with all that said, let's get into the very first method to help you develop your writing style. First, simply try reading like a writer. Writers who are planning a novel or practicing their techniques often gain a better appreciation of their favorite stories. While this is a great way to look at your prized novels from a different angle, you can also learn a lot from professional writers by studying their various methods. There is so much more to writing than the techniques that we learned in school. The way you study another writer's work is by finding something similar to your story. It could be an entire novel with a similar story to yours, or you can pick and choose scenes from different novels. Note how the author introduces characters, conducts their dialogue, sets the scene, and conveys the action. While you may use different words, you can follow the same overall methods that they use for key points. Of course, you'll only be employing the methods that you like the most, and as a result, you'll probably be taking inspiration from various authors. And I do highly recommend this method to beginner writers. You can learn a lot from a scene that you enjoy, whether it be the structure that the professional writer has used or the words. So having a notepad, an app on your phone, or simply copying that segment of text is a great way to progress your writing knowledge. Method number 2 is to practice writing stories you are familiar with. Whether it's the genre you have a greater attachment to, write the most, or even read the most, you have a better understanding of what you want from a book in that genre. That is an excellent way to start writing, as you don't have to think too much about the target audience, as you are the target audience. Every writer, no matter how much variety they try to include in their writing career, enjoys one genre more than the other. These are the kinds of stories they will like to tell more often and usually have the most joy in writing. That enjoyment is another factor in writing you'll need to take note of. If you're writing a genre you don't enjoy, your interest in writing will slowly decrease. If you already know that genre, those kinds of stories, then you need to practice it as often as you can. As I said earlier, writing is filled with many techniques and tools, and you want to get to know them well, especially if you plan to start with a large project. And it doesn't have to be the genres of writing that you're familiar with. A lot of writers like to write down their own thoughts or write about their experiences. Whether it's something they'll publish or not doesn't matter, because this is something they feel most comfortable in writing as they were there. They're able to understand the emotions they felt and tell the story from their perspective very well. So this is a great way to get into writing, as you're simply accessing your memories and conveying them to someone else, or in this case, to yourself through writing. And one thing I do recommend as an added tip when you're writing about your personal experiences is to write from the first person. A lot of beginner writers like to try third-person narration first, but I feel that if you start with first-person narration, you'll have better immersion. You'll be writing it from your perspective, so that's much easier. And after capturing the emotions and setting the scene, you should have enough experience from there to try third-person narration. So now with some notes taken, the next step is to work at it. If there's one thing I encourage for all writers, beginner or experienced, it's trying new things. Don't settle too quickly into a certain genre, or focus too much on some scenes more than others. Don't be afraid to tackle the styles and scenes you are unfamiliar with. As time passes, you may want to branch out in your writing, and you don't want to approach different genres only knowing how to write one kind of story. That's why it helps to also take notes from authors in different genres and experiment with those styles and techniques. At the end of the day, these methods might not click as well as the genre you're most comfortable with, but you will have taken steps to improve at writing them, perhaps even including such scenes in your novels for more variety and depth. For example, a well-written adventure novel is sure to include some great action scenes, but if you want to add a bit more to it, let's say a romance between the main characters or perhaps a tense thriller-esque scene, then experimenting with different genres and techniques is paramount. You want to make sure that the scenes that you are most comfortable with blend well into the scenes that you are still working at. However, with that extra hard work and practice, you'll have a novel that's a lot more well-rounded than if it was just an action-adventure. Unfortunately for me and a lot of other experienced writers, I got kinda stuck in a certain genre and style, and I didn't really experiment until a few years into my writing career. Had I done so, I probably would have had an easier time writing scenes that I would have liked to include in my stories, but struggled to do so because I was unfamiliar with them. So if that's something you want to avoid, one thing I recommend is yes, focus on the genre that interests you the most, but certainly pay attention to the other genres and techniques that can help you write scenes that you are more uncomfortable or unfamiliar with. My next piece of advice is to be authentic and genuine. When it comes to finding your writing voice, it's important to keep it real. Don't try to be someone you're not or pretend to like things you don't. It can be easy to do so when you consider the previous advice, the studying of other writers and the dabbling with different genres. Your writing should reflect who you are as a person when it comes to storytelling. If you want to write a new story in a different genre, try to find an aspect of that genre that interests you and tell a story that matters to you. Often the reader is actually trying to form a connection with the author through the story, the same way a viewer would connect with the artist through a painting, and vice versa. So your unique style needs to be accompanied with unique ideas. Of course, there are many concepts out there that you can reuse in your story. There's nothing wrong with that. But if you want to have a voice that really stands out among other writers, you got to really understand how you, as a person, will write that story. What habits do you have? What words do you use? How do you like to phrase things that is different from other writers? This combination of personality and quirks is sure to separate you from other authors and help you establish a better connection with your readers. It will certainly be present in more of your novels as well, and if you have fans, they are sure to notice it too. The fifth piece of advice is to embrace your flaws and imperfections. No one's perfect, and that's okay. When it comes to finding your writing voice, don't worry about being flawless. Embrace your imperfections and quirks and let them shine through in your writing. If you have a specific writing habit you can't let go of, it might be better to accept it. Whether it's your love for puns or your tendency to ramble on about your favorite aspect of the story, these little quirks can make your storytelling unique and interesting. It's certainly another factor that will help you stand out among other writers, as I mentioned earlier. Far too many beginner writers strive for perfection, and it can negatively impact their writing style. The writer might hesitate more, redo chapters instead of progressing, and encounter more writing blocks because of that self-imposed pressure. If you want to enjoy the experience of writing, I always encourage a writer to charge forward, regardless of small errors and spelling mistakes. I've always felt that it's better to have a rough first draft in 6 months than to have an okay draft in 6 years. What you want to do is charge forward and not look back on your story. There are bound to be major errors and story problems along the way. But if you form a habit of nitpicking, you can easily spend most of your time correcting the same first few chapters and never progressing in your story. This is a bad habit that a lot of writers tend to have. The end result is them still starting a second draft and still encountering the same problems. But had they pushed forward when inspiration was with them, they would have finished their novel in good time and still fixed those mistakes. And as a bonus method, I'd like to include a personal tip that I like to give writers who are just starting out. And that is to write short stories. Short stories are a great way to practice, test your skills, experiment with the different styles and genres, maintain the writing habit, and stay constructive. Some days you won't feel like tackling your novel, and sometimes those days turn into weeks and then months. For me, short stories have kept me consistent and my love for writing alive. And another point I'd like to make for more business-oriented writers is that short stories can always be taken, cleaned up, and expanded upon, and then thrown together into a book which you can also sell. So in writing short stories, you're not only practicing your writing, but you're also giving yourself an opportunity to create a product at the same time. There are many people out there as well who are purchasing short stories to create these compilations and sell them as well. So short stories is still a constructive way to improve your writing, but also to add to your writing career. Now, to give some of my final thoughts on this subject matter, when I was starting out in the writing world and I jumped straight into my first novel, I really didn't have a grip on my writing style. And because I was so inexperienced of writing, I also didn't have a good grip on the story. The characters kept changing, as did the plot, and it took several drafts before I'd finally finished the novel. It all came down to fine-tuning my skill set, which meant studying other writers and practicing a lot. And as I did that, I also came to better understand how a story should be structured, how long it should be, and what is the best way to plan it out. If you are new to writing, then I deeply encourage you to learn as much as you can, especially in the beginning, and never stop. You're always going to learn some new methods from other writers. And since you are in the beginning phase, your writing will dramatically improve every day. And now, if you're an experienced writer, what advice would you give beginner writers in finding their style? How did you find yours? Let me know in the comments below. And that brings us to the end of this video. As I said earlier, if you want some more premium writing education, I recommend my Writer's Workshop. But if you'd like to see my teaching methods first, there's also a link to a free writing course at the top of the description. And if you enjoyed this video, be sure to leave a like and subscribe if you haven't already. And I'll see you in the next one. As always, good day, good night, and happy writing.